Hello, 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 and welcome back to Conversations with JR. It is May 5th. I know a lot of people are saying Happy Cinco de Mayo. It is also May is a celebration of all the not only not the celebration, but it's mental health awareness month. And also, this weekend is Mother's Day, so happy Mother's Day to all the mothers and grandmothers and prospective mothers. I hope that you have a beautiful, wonderful, enjoying day off and day of celebrating and honoring the mothers. Today's conversation, if you've been following my Facebook page, I want to talk about mental illness, depression, and emotional trauma. And I call them the silent killers. And today's conversation may not be easy for a lot of people to hear or for a lot of people to even talk about because mental illness, depression, and emotional trauma and the damage that it causes to millions and millions of people each year kind of gets swept under the rug. And it's over the last year during the pandemic that people have seen a rise in people going to talk to therapists and realizing that they need to talk to somebody because of mental stress, mental illness, fatigue from the pandemic, and all the other emotional upheavals in their lives. But that's not the only reason why I want to talk about this subject today. Many years ago, I did on my YouTube channel, I did a video about mental illness and how people in public in general who do not educate themselves and do not understand the damages and the harms and the confusion over mental illness and depression and emotional brokenness. We say emotional brokenness, I say emotional trauma. And people just don't understand that the people who are suffering from the mental illness, they are judged and they are judged wrong. So I wrote a piece today. If you haven't read it on my Facebook page or my Word press blog, I wanted to read this piece for you today so that we can clarify some of the myths about mental illness, depression, and emotional damage and trauma. And please keep in mind, this is Conversations with JR. This is conversation dialogue to improve, empower people. I am not a therapist, I am not a psychologist, nor am I a specialist, but I hear people talk and I talk from my own experience. So let's get started. For the people who have difficulty distinguishing, you know, between depression and mental illness and emotional trauma, I just want you to give ear and listen to this. Mental illness or emotional damage, it's not a sour mood or a bad attitude or evil spirit, and it's not pretend, and it's really not a cry for attention. It's not fun, it's not a hobby, it's not a habit, and it's not a mask that people can put on and take off, and it's not even a choice. People who suffer with mental illness or trauma from emotional damage, whether they are diagnosed or undiagnosed, these people live in constant judgment, pain, confusion, and darkness. Mental illness or emotional trauma doesn't take a vacation. It won't mysteriously disappear, and it's certainly not something that people say, "Oh, they will outgrow it if they've been diagnosed as a child, they will outgrow." Medication might help for some people, but I think that we're living in a society that's over medicating instead of really getting to the root cause of this depression and mental illness. But for many people, and I mean many, millions of people, just to have a normal day is an ongoing struggle. It is best that we educate ourselves. So you cannot drink away mental illness. You cannot pray it away. You cannot wish it away. People who suffer the damage of this mental illness and judgment, you know, it is very crippling and it's very debilitating. And as quiet as it's kept, men suffer from mental illness, some form of depression, and emotional trauma just as much as women do. But even so, society has set forth this standard for men, this double standard, this bro code, as to say that real men don't cry and tell. Men are made to feel weak and damaged and ashamed if they admit that they are struggling with some form of mental illness. Thus, they remain silent, suppressing their anger and their resentment and bitterness towards a society that has set forth these standards that they must carry these burdens on their shoulders. Society has not created, they created very few places that men can go and to feel safe, to talk, and to heal. And we are seeing the rise of domestic violence and other violence towards children and other people in society. The anger of men, not bashing men, but the anger and what happens to men who have to suppress their emotional trauma. My sisters, women of all colors, and different religions and different cultures who suffer from mental illness and depression and emotional trauma, low self esteem, low self worth. And this sometimes was brought on from childhood and sexual abuse, emotional neglect, and domestic violence. Some little girls had to grow up faster than others, and they were put in charge of the household and taking care of little children while mommy was entertaining boyfriends. And they were exposed to things at a young age that they should have not been exposed to. So they have to grow up real fast. And some young ladies who have experienced sexual abuse, molestation, they are told, shh, don't tell anybody, not to tell. They are brainwashed. Little girls are brainwashed, and they're told that nobody, especially men that you meet, will want her if they discover that she is emotionally broken or damaged. And they call you damaged goods. So, what do some of these young girls and women do? Not all, but they act out. They act out because they're hurt and they become promiscuous and they get hooked on drugs and they hang out with the wrong people and they get addicted to abusive relationships and they become victim of the domestic violence, or they go around collecting baby fathers, meaning that they don't really mean to, but they're just having babies after babies after babies by different men. Because what are they doing? They are acting out and they are looking for healing and love in all the wrong faces and places. And society sees this happening to them, but no one will take them by the hand and help them. So that leaves them feeling abandoned and scared and alone and hopeless and broken. Children, our children in society, are the most vulnerable to mental illness. And when this happens in their young age, if it's not caught, if it's not treated, what happens is they carry this damage along with them into adulthood. We live in a society that we turn a blind eye to how children are being affected by, first of all, the chaos in the world, what they see on TV. There's a lot of violence. There's a lot of reality TV shows that they're being affected by, but also the conditions that they live in the homes, foster care system. You know, there's some children live from home to home to home. And this is very emotionally damaging to them. It is very emotionally damaged to them. We're now currently living in the last couple of years in a revival of violence against women, violence against children, racism, and broken families, especially in the African American community. Some people may say, well, what about our counterparts? I'm concerned about what's going on in our African American communities. By the same token, a child's future, a lot of children in the African American community, their future is endangered by parents who are too quick to have their children diagnosed and medicated, all because they want to collect a social security check for that child. This is what happens with that child. This begins a lifetime of children being falsely labeled as dangerous and damaged and slow and unable to learn. And this follows them throughout their life. Now, listen, there are some children who are born with all races and all colors, who are born with certain learning disabilities or certain illnesses that cause them to lag behind in growth and cause them to lag behind in cognitive development, and they don't hit certain milestones. But there are treatments and other ways that we can treat these children. But what I am talking about is the children that live in homes that are neglected, that their basic needs are not being met. They don't feel loved. They don't feel cherished. Love is not expressed. Love is not given. You know, they live in homes where family time is non-existent. I understand mom and dad has to go out to work, but family time is non-existent. They're being raised by technology. You know, the parents buy them all kinds of technology and let them go in their rooms, and that's the way that they're raised. There's no family bond, there's no family connection. And let me tell you some of the most damaging aspects of children's life. Children who grow up in single parent home and children who are being raised by aging grandparents, that have an effect on them. It truly has an effect on them. Some of the most damaging effects of mental illness to the individuals who are suffering: it damages families, it wrecks marriages. People find it difficult to maintain employment, friendships, relationships. They feel alone, they feel misunderstood, they feel judged, and they spend a lot of time in isolation. And the best that the medical profession seems to be doing is they seem to just be coming up with more and more medication to dull this and not really treat the core problems of some of these mental illnesses, causes of depression, causes of emotional trauma that might be able to be treated without medication. Some doctors even suggest institutionalizing people. And I think that's just a way of just shutting people away and not really dealing with the root of the problem in this society. I wrote about this topic because I experienced at a young age depression, and it went untreated for years. And I saw the impact that it had on my life and the impact that it had on relationships. And I did not understand the reason why my life was the way it was until I paid attention and I sought help and I got help. I observed as a young child domestic violence in my childhood. I saw in my childhood, growing up, all around me, I saw the damage that can be done to a family when men get angry. Again, there are many men out there who suffer from mental illness, depression, and emotional trauma from things that might have happened to them in childhood. Because men are told not to talk, not to verbalize their emotions, not to connect to their emotion because they're men. And you see this happen to society, and you see the destruction that it can cause in the family. I saw it in my family firsthand. I am on a path to, and I've been on this path to healing from emotional trauma, from years and years and years of depression going untreated. I have been able to do it with therapy, yoga, without medication. I'm one of the fortunate ones. But what I'm hoping by talking to you today about this subject, that we're having this conversation, is that it's going to open up people to have conversations about it, more awareness. We need to educate ourselves. We need to understand where's the resources. We need to understand how to find the resources to help people so that we can understand instead of isolating people, acceptance and inclusion, and how to deal with, understand, you know, people who go through mental illness. It is not their fault. It's not something that they could just snap out of. It's not something that they want. It's an unfortunate disease. Mental illness, depression, Emotional damage and trauma comes from things that have happened to us and children, adults in this society, and we swallow it, we suppress it, and we go on with life. But it comes out. Sooner or later, it comes out. Just look around us in society. Don't play ignorant. Look around us in society and see the damage that mental illness and depression, and when people are emotionally broken and damaged, look at the damage that it causes us as society, because the resources, the money, and the attention that we need, we're so quick to diagnose children, we're so quick to throw them in special ed, we're so quick to get angry at people and have lack of patience and understanding and compassion. This is a serious illness, and it needs more than just the month of May every year to bring awareness. We need to really educate ourselves as a society, because people are struggling, people are hurting. And when people hurt, what do we say? They hurt others. And we need to put an end to that. We need to sit down and start having conversations. Listen to your children when they speak to you. Listen to your spouse. Observe your friends. Mental illness during the pandemic is on a rise. Listen to people. Sometimes that's all people need. Suicide was on a rise. You think that people want to just get up in the morning and think about, oh, I'm just going to kill myself. I just want to end my life and that's it? I have been there. Mental illness and depression and the pain and the struggle from emotional damage is real. It is very much real. So the next time you joke about that conversation that you have in your head and them little people talking to you in your head, listen to that conversation. We need to begin to heal, help each other to heal within the community, within families. Churches need to get involved. This is a deep issue that I feel very compassionate about, because it has affected me and it has affected members of my family, and I see friends around me that this subject of mental illness have affected. It's not something that we can sweep underneath the rug. So, like this video, share this video, start having some good conversations, open conversations, reach out to your mental illness professionals. That doesn't make you a weak person. That doesn't make you, we like to use the word crazy. No, that doesn't make you a crazy person. That doesn't make you a weak person. It makes you know that you need help, and you reach out to the people that can help you to understand what is going on in your life. Conversations with JR is all about empowering men and women so that we can be better people for ourselves. Conversation with JR is also about looking at the family structure. Look at what's breaking the family structure and begin to work together to heal. I can be found on all social media platforms. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, Conversations with JR, where you're going to get more videos on relationships and mental health and so many other topics that I talk about. Until we talk to each other again, I hope the next conversation that you are having with yourself and with others about mental illness, it is about breaking the patterns, breaking the destruction, loving yourself, and caring about yourself and others enough to want to get help. I thank you for listening, and don't forget to share.